of his career, knows incredible amount about it. And so tonight is going to talk a little bit about how kind of some of you all can best leverage search firms in that realm. And then he'll be available for what I'm sure will be a fruitful Q&A. So Nathan, take it away.
Do I need to train change?
Sorry, I keep that one. We'll pass it around.
Mark it off. Thank you. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me here tonight. And I will say, it's been a long time since I've done a presentation. So go easy on me tonight. But let me go ahead and maybe I'll try to share my screen. Yeah. So yeah, I am an executive recruiter, and I've been doing this for 14 years. So we thought the best thing I could probably share, or the most insight I would have on is what a recruiter does, maybe just some basics about how we work, and really most importantly, how do you leverage a recruiter as your resource in your job search. I'll do just a quick introduction. Name is Nathan Wood. I work for a company called CSI Companies, and I have a very specific niche as a recruiter, and I was working for community banks across the Southeast. So I work for small banks, or my clients are small banks in the Southeast that are under $2 or $3 billion, so very, very small. And they hire me to find very hard to find, specific, sometimes more broad, but usually very specific bank employees. But I've also been a job seeker myself for over 1 year. So I have spent time in trenches looking for a job. So I have, I'd say, experience on both sides. And I know personally how challenging and tough it can be. First off, too, I'll run through some things that are probably very basic. Some of you may already know them, but I just don't want to assume anything, because I'll talk to folks and all the time and just assume they know something about how I would be interacting and working with them. And I'll realize, oh, they might not know if they have to pay my fee, or they might not need to know what they need to tell me or what they don't need to tell me at the highest level too sometimes. So I don't want to make any assumptions about what we may know or may not. Also, I always enjoy an interactive session. So if you have a question, just raise your hand, and I'm happy to answer it or explore it. So first off, I thought I'd just go through how does a recruiter work. And very simply, a recruiter like myself is hired by a company. So part of my job is going out to build relationships with companies that, some companies use recruiters, some not, some have their own internal recruiters, some have their own internal recruiters, but will use a recruiter sometimes. So it really is company by company on whether they would use a recruiter. And that can all change. There could be a new HR director that says, we're not going to use recruiters anymore. We're going to bring them all in-house, or vice versa. So the companies pay me to go find candidates that they're looking for that they may not be able to find themselves, or just may not want to budget internally for them to find. I will also say in general, there's two types of recruiters, but I would be considered a direct hire recruiter. So the positions I'm working on are typically full-time and direct hire, which means candidates would not be working for me. Of course, I'm just the middle person, and they'll be hired directly by the company. In many cases, if it's a contract role or a temporary role, you might be paid by the temp or contract company in then turn, they're paid the client, the company. And there's obviously many different reasons why a company would do that. And just to make it, I mean, just completely transparent, I'm paid by a percentage of salary, the year one salary. So honestly, the more candidates, higher the candidate salary, the higher my fee is, which is pretty, it's kind of nice because both interests are in alignment on there. It's a little trickier sometimes. I think I don't go into a lot of detail, but on the contract side, it's a little trickier on how they're paid. There's a bit of a spread difference, which can make it a little convoluted, but that's how we're paid. As for finding candidates, this is probably pretty commonplace, but we look on job boards. I would say for the direct hire, it's most of it, I would say, is looking directly on LinkedIn for candidates. And we have what you would call LinkedIn Recruiter, which you pay a lot of money for, which is really helps easily search for candidates based on qualifications. There's a lot of different ways to search, but you can really get very specific on who you're looking for. And then referrals. A lot of the candidates I come to might be referrals, calling someone I know, hey, you know someone good, you know someone can do this. Banking world, there's a lot of mergers and acquisitions, so it's, hey, have you know, someone might say this bank being sold, you might check and see with them. I think I covered the candidates place. So just the very basics on how we operate. So before I move on, are there any questions with that part? Yeah, pretty straightforward. Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, it is paid by the company. So I would say if a recruiter is telling you that you would owe them a fee or anything, I would be very, very cautious. There might be some high-level search firms that wrap that in with their resume writing or something like that. But in general, candidate's not obligated to pay. It's the company that's going to pay. So again, some of this might be pretty common sense, but how do I find a recruiter? You know, some may get to you or find you through you posting a resume online. I would say a lot of it's going to come probably through LinkedIn. Some recruiters, if you're in a very specialized industry, you might get a phone call or an email directly if they're really trying to be very specific. But as for finding a recruiter, I think if you're in it would depend on who you're going to look for or work with. If you're in a very specialized industry or a very specialized niche, maybe IT or I'm just going to use some examples in banking or in architecture, something like that. I think you're going to want to be picky and selective on who you use. Someone who understands your space and your industry. Not that someone who doesn't might not have a job and you might still listen to them, or not that they couldn't bring an opportunity, but I think the more specific your role or your industry is, you want to be selective, and you probably would see recruiters that if they're posting jobs that are very specific, you can ask, is this an industry you deal with or you place people or candidates with my background? And you can certainly reach out to one, of course, on LinkedIn if you start to see one that's, like, wow, they're really in my space. They're posting a lot of jobs that I would be interested in. Maybe not in my market, but I would have interest in those. Also, you can, of course, ask friends if they've had a good experience with a recruiter in your industry or in with your background. I'm sorry, some of this is probably just kind of common sense, but I try to really sit down and think, like, how do I find candidates? How do they get to me? and sometimes it's me being proactive, reaching out, but a lot of times it's a referral from someone I know, someone I've worked with in the past, or someone will reach out and say, hey, I had a friend ask me if they knew any good recruiters. Would you talk to them? And depending on their background, I'll usually talk to, if it comes to a friend or comes to a good contact, I'll usually talk to anyone they send. But I will usually be upfront if I tell them that, hey, so, I want to be very honest and open with them that you might not, see a lot of jobs from me in your role, but know another recruiter or somebody that might be in their space that they can work with. I talked about the last one. I know some of that might be pretty just finding a recruiter.
Most of the recruiters in my industry. Most of the recruiters in my industry seem to be internal. I really hope you'll touch tonight on how in the world do you get in and get the name and much less the manager's name.
When you say internal, you mean the internal recruiter within the company that you're, okay, so they're all not really getting very far, or yeah. Well, I probably will finish well before time, so I can definitely kind of touch on that. That'd be great. Yeah. I don't want broad generalities here, but a lot of internal recruiters they may grace because they probably are overloaded a lot. But what that means is they're going things really quick, right? And a lot of internal recruiters are going to look at that last role up exactly with what the manager said or what the current job title is. They're gonna pass it. I don't mean to disparage internal recruiters, but we're sort of known for just shooting things down. And in some cases, they may not have even had a thorough interview with the hiring manager to understand where else they, be open to. And so bottom line is they're going to miss a lot of good people. And this kind of flows into something I was going to touch in near the end. I think when you're in a job, it's, using recruiters are a resource that you should use. But in some ways, you're also acting as your own recruiter. And I think it's good to almost think like a recruiter, because we're having to, we're building relationships and looking at job boards just like a job seeker is. We're maybe being a little more aggressive about it and assertive by reaching out directly to hiring managers. And I'd be cautious here because that can obviously be a no-no sometimes. But I think if I'm personally looking for a job and I see a role for just a senior, and I can look at LinkedIn and look at their company and say that based on the size of this company, and the controller would probably be the hiring. And sometimes in the job description they'll say not the name, but they'll give you the title. And so I don't think it's a bad idea to connect with the controller online and or on LinkedIn. And you can just, if they connect with you, you can very politely just say that, hey, just want to let you know I'm actively looking for new opportunities. I applied for your role for the senior accountant role, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have, if there's any, an opportunity to discuss my background if there's any interest. I don't think that's doesn't hurt. And the worst case scenario is very low likely someone internal recruiter might say, hey, please don't, or whatever. But in that case, you probably already got an interview request. So, because I think a lot of times, if you are qualified or whoever the hiring manager would be, would reach out to the internal recruiter and say, hey, this person reached, I'd like to, not always, but if it lines up, they probably reach out and say, I'd like to look at their background or. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I think, recruiters kind of make it a job in a way to kind of circumvent, again, not just respecting HR, or some of our professionals have been some about that's fine, but we usually will start with the hiring manager because they can always send a staff over to HR, but HR usually isn't sent over to a hiring manager. It should. I mean, if they did that with every recruiter, they get fired. So anyway, I hope that helped. I'm glad you brought that up, but I really didn't think about the difference between, I mean, I'm an external recruiter, so I have anytime 10 to 20 clients, always looking for new clients. Internal recruiters are, their only client is that one company and all the hiring managers there. And some will keep your name on file. And I've had some, I've known some really good internal recruiters, external, there's a lot of bad external recruiters too. So not internal recruiters are off on it. So some will keep your name file. And I think I would treat them just as you would anyone else, where you would follow them and say, hey, I saw this. You had a good rapport, but you didn't get a job. You can always follow up with an internal recruiter as well and say, yeah, I saw this role. You think I'd be a fit for this? I enjoyed talking to you the last time or interacting. So anyway, not to go on too often. Hope that helps.
Nathan,
Yeah.
any thoughts on, I get the question pretty routinely in this group, the whole LinkedIn to work versus not did you think it's a good thing to put that tag out there? Do you bad thing? Do you think it matters at all? But I get that pretty consistently in this group.
That's a good question, because I've had the same question. I've had many people wonder, should I even put that out there? Does it make me look like I'm having a time finding a job? Or I don't know, to be honest with you. I do that.
Is there a search field in in the LinkedIn recruiter?
Yes.
You just look for people.
There is a way
that
we can search for people who are open to work, regardless of whether they have the green banner on.
Okay. So then maybe it doesn't.
So maybe it doesn't. So you could. I don't think you need to have the green banner on.
Okay.
For someone to select you, because I'll tell you from my view, it doesn't matter one way or the other whether I see the green banner, but I will usually start who are open to work, because there are many people who are open to the work that might be employed, and they're obviously not going to want to put the green banner up, right? So their manager sees that. But I will always start with who's open to work, because obviously, that's they're going to be more interested in returning my email and having a call, most likely. So. Yeah, and honestly, I've never even done it from the other side. I just know how to search from it. But yeah, maybe somebody can show you how to. And it'll probably, I think it asks you too, even some preferences, because a lot of the roles I work on might require, I might be looking on a regional basis for somebody that hopefully would relocate to Nashville or somewhere else. And I'll know sometimes it'll say the city they're open to or not, or sometimes it'll say. So I will also say too, if you are open to like Southeast or the nation, just make sure you put that on there, because sometimes I'll go through and if somebody says they're only open to Wisconsin where they live right now, then I might not give them a first look. Like, well, I probably should focus on someone who's open to relocate.
And it's like job titles, location, hybrid, both, and then there's other ones. Recruiters only are all.
Yeah, and that's very important too. And I'm glad you brought that up too. Be mindful of what you put as a title too, because sometimes, I'll be looking for a role that is, I don't, let's just go back to the controller thing. Let's do the accounting. And if somebody puts, they want to be CFO or CEO, again, I would still maybe talk to them, but I might not talk to them first because it's like, well, it doesn't look like they're really, the client's going to think they're maybe overqualified already. And now they're saying they only want to be a CEO or a CFO. So maybe that's not the right fit, or maybe they would be open to being a controller. And I could certainly still talk to them about that, but they might not be the first one I talk to about that. So just be mindful about what you put there too. Make sure you're putting out what you're hoping to.
I had a question that's a little bit long-winded, but you can handle it.
Yeah, here.
I mean, as far as how your industry has evolved over time, I mean, I'm dating myself a little bit, but, back in the day before the internet and this, that, or the other, you would essentially, for my first 2 jobs came from headhunters. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have no problem with them. I'm using an old school term,
Yeah.
but, as it's evolved, I'm kind of thinking out loud here, but it's 80-20 rule. I mean, everybody's going to want to go after C-suites because of the way that you're incentivized, which I have zero problem with. And then there's also recruiters that are more body shop type, right? I mean, like filling IT roles or Epic software, fill in the blanks, right?
Yeah.
So my real question is, what about mid-level stuff? In other words, you'll do the mid-level accountant, perhaps. I mean, you could do 10 of those or 1 in the C-suite, right? And so I'm just asking you out loud whether or not there is a bit of a gap in care or a dearth of people that do mid-level professionals, as far as recruiters. Because with respect, most people in here are not C-suite types. Otherwise, I mean, we wouldn't be sitting here if we were C-suite types or middle management, upper middle management, or that type of thing. So, again, if you can just kind of, you guys spend a lot of time with people that are VP-ish, doesn't have to be SVP. What are your thoughts?
That's a great question. Actually, I would, and just from my experience, because I've done a little of the C-suite. Most of mine has been in the middle level. Yes, and I would say most contingent recruiters work in that space, because even though the C-suite is, I mean, it's big money and it's real exciting and all that, there's just not as much opportunity out there. And there's some high level or hoity-toity executive search firms that's what they specialize in. That's their thing. And so, and if you're a recruiter in the mid-level, you're going to find out you're probably not going to get a lot of those searches because you're competing with companies that do that day in and day out with retained and all that. So, because in fact, my mentor, when I first started, and you get so excited, you say, come in with a CFO resume, and you're like, this guy wants to talk to me and he's interested, he's open. And my manager, kind of laugh and say, well, that's great, but you're not going to get a lot of those roles. Like, focus on the bread and the butter. If it's finance and accounting, staff, senior, controller, accountant, financial analyst. So I don't know if that really answered your question, but in my world, most of the contingent search firms are in that middle space. Yeah.
How would someone deal with maybe suspecting that they're having issues with being overqualified and stuff like that? I have a real good history, but I'm currently just looking for anything.
Yeah.
And my resume looks pretty impressive. And the kinds of things that I want to do are the kinds of things that I've done are probably indicating something a little higher, but I don't really want to wait 6 months to a year to find the ideal job. I want to get something now.
Yeah.
I need something now. So how can I do I tone that down with a new resume, or do I just hide the fact that I've been in all these really good positions? What do I do about that?
It's a great question. And that's a real tough one to answer, because it's a real challenge. And it's not, you can tone it down, but you can't really erase history, right? And people will see that, in that overqualified objection is just out there. And companies a lot of times are concerned that the biggest concern is someone being a flight risk, right? Like, I'm just going to be a landing zone. So that, and I'm not saying that's the truth, but that's what's going. that's what's going through their mind, right? Well, we might hire Jeff, but shoot, if, in 3 or 4 months, his dream job comes along, we're going to be gone. So I think my opinion is there are some managers that are going to just, you're not going to be able to overcome that objection. And there's others that might be okay with that, because I've placed candidates that were overqualified and did a great job, and I want still there, just because they were, some are just, they're tired. Like, I don't want to be a senior leader anymore. I want to do a good job and get paid and go home and feel good about myself. And the managers believe them. Another option is to do contract. And I know that that's not easy always to find depending on your industry, but contract work or interim work or I would say temp work is that's one place where you can wait to find the dream job, do something. And usually someone who's overqualified is more welcome because they're not as worried about a flight risk. I mean, anyone on a contract is kind of a flight risk because it's a contract. So that's where I will see for someone who's got very high qualifications, you can find contract or interim work. And then another thing too is that, you get in on something that may be your next full-time job. They may not want to lose you. Say, well, Jeff's knocking it out of the park here. He might be still looking for other jobs since we're temporary. Let's make him a full-time offer. So those are two things, because it's really hard to tone down the resume. I mean, I don't think you shouldn't do it. I think you should, talk to a resume writer or ramp it down. But anyway, does that help? Or
that helps, but now I have a follow-up question.
Okay, good.
What kinds of companies hire contractors?
I would say a lot do. It's just finding the right need, and I think it's really that a lot of that's going to come on job boards or recruiters. A lot of recruiters are aware of contract or interim or temp opportunities, and it's just a timing thing. Some companies, they might do it, that might just be part of their MO, or others it might be just timing to where someone goes on maternity leave or somebody retires and they just need someone to fill the gap. I remember in finance and accounting, I didn't do a lot of finance and accounting, but one common thing was somebody retiring, and then the recruiter, what the recruiting firm would try to do, which is pretty smart, is we would call them and say, hey, while you're looking for your full-time resource, how about we send you an overqualified, basically like an extremely qualified person to come sit there for a month. They're not looking to do this full-time, but they'll come sit there for a month, gather all the information from your controller or CFO while they're leaving, and get all that ready to go, and then basically hand it over and help the transition with the new controller or CFO. So, and that's just one instance, but it just really depends. Some companies, some large consulting firms, that's all they hire are contractors or contract interim resources. So, and that's probably a convoluted answer, but it really just depends. Some, it's a part of their budget. Others, it's just a small company, maybe just in a random circumstance.
If I can add there, Jeff, what I would do is I wouldn't dumb down your resume. I wouldn't undersell sort of your experience and your capabilities. But focus on the organization. I mean, the most important thing is you got to get a hold of sort of a live body, right, within an organization, kind of make your case to. And I would try and make the case about why you're interested in the organization, right? And, I really want to work here. And yes, maybe the ideal job for me here is this position, but you know what? I'm really interested in working for the company. I'm more than qualified to do this job, and I'm more than willing to do this job. And, if then that job opens up somewhere down the line, 2-3 years, great. But I'm happy to get in and start working for you now in the role that's available. And, you mentioned, I think earlier, financial crisis. I lost my job in the financial crisis many moons ago, and that's exactly what I had to do. right? I took a job that was essentially kind of an entry level sort of finance job that I would have the kind of job I would have had, 5 or 6 years prior to that. But that's just kind of what I had to do. But that was the case that I made. And originally, the company that I worked for, they passed me over because they thought that I was overqualified, but I was kind of able to sort of get an ear with somebody there and sort of make the case that, I'm just really trying to get my foot in the door here because I'm really interested in working here. And that was successful. So anyway, 2 cents. Yeah.
I work for a company called Cerecore, CERECORE.com. You can look, they have jobs and they're contractor. I also know of a company called Parallon. Is it? Yeah, PA, 2 R's, 1 R. Parallon. Yeah, look at those two. They do contractors all the time.
What percentage of the listings that you end up having yourself end up being on a website or being on LinkedIn? Because at the end of the day, most of the time you're going to get your job through a connection. I mean, let's agree on that. But I'm also saying that if you're on a search, would that be on a website typically? Or I doubt if a community bank would have something on LinkedIn, right? I mean, because then they're kind of diluting your efforts, and then somebody's got to field those things that come in over the transom.
A lot of the small companies I work for, they don't post it.
I wouldn't think so.
And I need to do it more, but a lot of times I might not even post it just because I'll get 10 applicants for just the funky stuff I work on, and if it's compliance or something. But yeah, yeah, it is. But honestly, though, I really need to post more, because when I do post, sometimes I'll see someone hit that might not be qualified for this, but I'm like, oh, I need to know that person, or I might have something else for them. And that's why as a recruiter, it's important for, I think, recruiters to stay specialized with something. One reason is you can talk to the candidates, have more intelligent conversation, and do a better job for your clients, but also you just start to build this network of people and friends. I've had candidates I've worked with, not placed, but been friends with for years, and we share information and give them a buzz when something comes up. And sometimes they're not interested, or they are, but you kind of build relationships within the community that you work in, and it really builds and grows on that. But it's important, I think, to stay specialized into something. And that's why I hope that if you're in a specific industry, you can find a good recruiter that knows your space and gets to know you, and they understand, even though you might be overqualified for a lot of things, they know when there's like, hey, this company, this is one you can just get into, or they could just help create relationships, because that's what gets jobs, is the relationship. You have a question?
Yeah, I asked this last month.
Nope.
I asked this last month, but I want to ask you, since you are a recruiter, if I'm kind of like want to find some recruiter that can look out for me. If I hire you and you find me something, I'll give you 10% of my salary. I don't know if that's called reverse recruiter. Or are there recruiters out there that work for job seekers and not for the company, and they're compensated by the job seeker? I'd gladly pay somebody like you if you looked out for me, just like a real estate agent, to sell my house. I'd pay you to find me a job instead of me being one of 12 people and you're trying to fill a job considering all of us.
Yeah,
if I'm paying you. Aren't there reverse recruiters or something like that?
yeah, there could be. I'm not aware of any. But I mean, if someone was willing to do that, and you were willing to pay them, and they were, out there looking for you, I couldn't see that as a bad thing at all. In some cases, I will say, when you're with a recruiter that is really lined up with your industry, you can ask a recruiter, can you proactively market my background? Or would you proactively market my background? Because that's something sometimes I get slammed to busy and I'm trying to just fill the roles I have, but I will often take not the resume, but I'll put together a blurb on a candidate and push it out to my clients or the market in general, because not only does that help the candidate, but it helps me because it's a win-win scenario. Because it's helping me get jobs, because someone might say, well, that's not who we're looking for, but do you have someone a little more junior or whatever? Or they say, I would like to interview that person. So it's actually, I can't do it for everybody, but it's a routine part of my practice. It's proactively marketing candidates. So that's something you could always ask a recruiter to do. Do you mind making calls on my behalf or marketing my background? And most recruiters, I think, if you fall in their industry, they would be very open to that. Another thing you can do too, and I've made placements like this way, and it's been a real win-win. I think this is a situation where you need a lot of trust with your recruiter. It's almost like becoming a friend. But I've had candidates send me jobs and say, hey, before I apply to this, do you want to give this a shot? And it's like, of course. And if they're a ethical person, they'll reach out to the hiring manager and say, I've got this, basically do what I'm talking about. I have this candidate and I think they match your qualifications. Would you be interested in talking to them? And sometimes the client will say, we're not working with recruiters. And so in that case, I would loop back quickly to the candidate and say, hey, they're not working with recruiters. Go ahead and apply, or do what you need to do and help them however I can. But some candidates I've worked together that way. It's like, let's just give it a shot first, because we can try to go around the application process and go right to the hiring manager and see. And if they're not going to work with me, or a recruiter, then that's fine. But we gave it a shot. I've made multiple placements that way. It was a real win-win where I might not have even known about the role. I just didn't see it on the job board. So, but that's something I think you really need to have some trust with your recruiter, that they're going to, come back and tell you if they're, or even if it's in 24 hours, 48 hours and they haven't responded, I'd still want to tell the candidate, hey, they haven't responded to me, do what you want to do. I don't want to hold you back, and miss a chance to get in, to apply.
One of the Zoom participants saying, keep track of companies that have referral bonuses, right? That if they bring someone to the table, and then see how you can get plugged into someone in that company, right? You may already know somebody in that company, and just start working. How can I get in and get, known by someone there who then might feel comfortable enough referring me to the position? And
it all comes down to the name of the game. Having somebody who's got credibility referring you into a company or an opportunity, right? And sometimes it's a recruiter that has that credibility, right? Sometimes it's Nathan, and he's worked with this company, and they've worked with Nathan, and they like Nathan, and they trust Nathan. And so if Nathan brings you to them, it's like, okay, this person, yeah, we like Nathan, we trust Nathan. This person probably is pretty qualified. Or it could be an existing employee of that company, right? And so, the best thing you can do is to find that. And, then the next best thing is just to knock on the door of the hiring manager, and try and build your own credibility, but it's harder. And then, the next thing, the best thing to do is to, apply online and lob your resume in there, and, throw your lot with the other 300 people that applied. But that's the toughest,
Yeah.
right? That's by far the toughest. So that's your last resort. So.
HCA has military recruiters. So if any of you guys are military, you go directly to them, and then they help you And then they put military on there, and that's one of their big programs and big pushes is to hire veterans. So, and y'all, I can hook you up. I can hook you up if you know anybody.
I'm in the IT arena. I talked with the gentleman who placed me at Cigna, Medicare Advantage division of Big Cigna out of Connecticut. They sold the Medicare practice. It's gone. I got laid off. It was about a year ago. So this is my question. And I asked him about it. He says, well, most people know in the IT industry, there's been mass layoffs. I mean, we've seen it in the news. It's everywhere. So how do you navigate that with having a year's gap on your resume? Do you do, okay, I've been doing taxes part-time because, you know, I'm one of the unique IT people. I'm a certified public accountant. You put that, I mean, show that you've been doing something. I'm going to try to get another certification. So just a little bit of advice in that arena to avoid any potential stigma that, okay, this guy's just been sitting by the pool in the summer, not doing anything, not applying, enjoying his time off.
Yeah, and that's a great question. That's another one of those things between, you know, the big things recruiters are going to see on a resume they want to talk to you about are job jumps. And most recruiters want to talk to not in a condemning way, but like, okay, help give me some backstory so I can not spin it, but just paint this in the proper way. Because sometimes, you know, whether it's a hiring manager or whatnot, they're seeing that thinking the worst. So the job jumps, job gap, overqualified, or, you know, okay, what happened at of course, most people should probably understand the layoff, but what was he doing, right? Like, so I read the other day where I thought this was pretty good. I mean, if there's anything you've done, put it on there. And especially, I mean, and of course, you want to be honest about anything, but if you had an LLC or something where it's consulting, then that doesn't look terrible to say you've been consulting or something, you know, on there. Because in a way you have, and if you had your own LLC, you could put, you know, such and such consultant.
You don't need the LLC.
Yeah.
Right. And talk a little bit about what you've been doing so that it doesn't look like you've just been sitting around doing nothing.
Well, in fairness, I was a contractor.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And I did that for Cigna, that's what I've always.
Yeah.
I'm not a full-time.
Putting something there is definitely better than just stop.
Yeah, absolutely.
So. Right. No, that was better than any of the other stuff I'm probably going to cover. And actually, some of this, I mean, this is real rudimentary, but what do recruiters need from me? Of course, the resume. And I'll just say, feel free to ask your recruiter about resume tips, and they'll certainly tell you. They'll certainly, I think, help you with anything that's going to be a red flag or a challenge with either that company or that you're looking at, or companies in general. But just remember that recruiters are not resume writers. So, you know, I always tell people, I'll give you my 2 cents, but please, you know, see a resume writer if you really want a serious resume. But when I'm talking to candidates, it's usually simplifying things, sometimes removing things from the bottom that aren't relevant maybe anymore, shortening. I know there's probably a lot of different theories on this. I'm kind of a 1 or 2 page person, just simple. Or if you have a real expansive career, maybe a 1-page summary, and then the option to always offer, you know, there's a more comprehensive resume if requested, something like that. But I think, again, going back to like an internal recruiter or someone that's just, you know, you got 15 seconds that they're looking at this. Sometimes too much stuff is confusing to people and will just cause them to move on. So I'm not here to do a resume seminar, but I'm just trying to think as a recruiter, some of the things I'm usually telling people. And then if you've had some career transitions, which everyone has. Just make sure you explain those. I mean, I've had some people that it looked like they were job hoppers, and they didn't put that the company had just been bought 3 or 4 times. It was actually incredible that they had survived every acquisition because they were so good, but it looked like they just jumped around all the time. So that's an extreme example, but or sometimes they just won't tell me that, oh yeah, this was a merger, or that was a contract role, or this was a interim situation. So just you can, and I think you can be very candid with a recruiter, because in some ways, I mean, they're really on the same team. They both want to make a placement, so they will, if you've had a challenge of being overqualified, or job works, or you've been out of work for a little while, ask them, and most of them will give you some advice. Of course, bounce that off your resume writer or anyone else. But of course, salary expectations, I know that's a bit tricky sometimes. There's a lot around that, or how much you tell, how much you don't tell. Of course, it's great to have your references lined up. And again, I would say too, is if you're working with a recruiter and you're not really talking about a specific role, feel free to share your references, maybe, but you might be cautious about that, because you can maybe burn your references out if they're going to just get called. And I will say too, I hate to say this, but some recruiters will call references for leads. So I hate to say that. So just be cautious on who you share your references with. And, it'd be one of those things where if I was sharing my references and they asked for them, and we were at the appropriate place in the interview process, maybe I already had an interview with the client, or, I just would be specific with the recruiter of when do you anticipate calling them. And I probably wouldn't allow them to do it too early in the process. Just again, to be respectful of the references time, and all that. So,
Nathan, any thoughts on the sort of salary topic of, one question that I get fairly routinely is around that, what you've made versus sort of what you'll work for, right? And obviously we all want to make as much as we can.
Yeah.
Right. But, it's fairly routine that, folks, especially in mid-level, mid-career, you get to a point you're making pretty good money. That opportunity goes away. You're willing to work for less. You'd obviously like to make what you were making before. How do you kind of thread that needle of, not sort of giving away the fact that you're willing to work for a bit less than you made before, and not scaring people off with sort of what you were paid before, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a real. I was glad you brought that up, because I was going to cover that, because I know that's a really a tricky situation. But there's a lot of stuff on, you tell a recruiter what you were making. Oh, go ahead.
Every time that's asked of me.
Oh, sorry.
Every time that's asked of me,
It would be, well, what's the range?
Right.
And then as soon as I find the range, then I know whether I want to fit in that range or not. And then we have a conversation. I say, well, I've been paid more than that, been paid less than that, but I like getting paid more than that.
Yeah.
And so so they usually put me in the higher part of the range.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to start, is to first off ask what the range is, and then I guess in some situations they might still put that back on you, but never had that. So yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah, I think that's perfect. And then just share what you feel comfortable sharing. I can only go from my experience. I've had a lot of candidates be just completely hey, here is exactly what I make, or here's what I made. I'll tell you, I'll take less, or this is, I'm looking for no less than, if you had something with 90, I would listen to you, or I'd want to hear about it. And I've had some be a little more guarded about what they've made in the past, and that's fine to me. I mean, there might be a point where the client wants to know because maybe they're concerned about them taking a step back. It's usually the concern, but
that's a good sign of culture. You open up, you really want to work.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, so that was, we kind of covered that. And one other thing I throw in there too, just, again, I hate to bring this up, but there's, like anything, there's good recruiters and there's not. Unless you knew a recruiter well, I'll have some candidates I worked with a long time tell me other places they're in. And I appreciate that. But if I don't know them that well, and I would say the same thing, they might tell me, hey, I've got another one or two irons in the fire, but they're not going to tell me where. And I don't ask. It's fine. It's not my business. If you're interviewing for something that's probably not have a lot of people interviewing a small company, I wouldn't tell any recruiters where you're because there could be some, that you don't want them calling in there and trying. It's just wanted to say, I hate to bring that up, but that it happens. So again, they're ethical and unethical recruiters. Use your judgment. How do I follow up with recruiters? I just say like anybody else, persistent, kind. I have people check in all the time. Hey, it's been a week or two. See anything else that's come up for me? And sometimes it's hey, no, sorry, haven't seen anything, but thanks for checking in. And other times it might just jog something. So you'll have some people who won't respond, and it might. There's recruiters that are, I think, classic or very well known for ghosting or just being, and there's some that just they're not going to respond, but it's not personal, and that's just them maybe being disorganized or whatever's going on in their world. But I would just say, just continue to check in, just like anything else. Be persistent, set reminders, and if you've got 5 or 6 recruiters, just keep checking in with them. And then sometimes I've posted a job on LinkedIn, and someone I've known for years will say, "Hey, what about me?" And I go, "I didn't think about you. Thanks for reaching out." Because it's, we're just like anybody. Everybody's dealing with so many different things, distractions, and emails, and so I appreciate it when people I know check in, and sometimes, and I'll be real candid, and I'll tell them too. Sometimes it's, "Hey, this one's not a role for you," and I'll tell you why. Like it's, you don't want it, and they it's not the right background, but people appreciate it when I'm real candid and just honest with it, why it would or wouldn't fit, or if they're going to want you to relocate.
How often does it follow up with you? Like you just said 1 or 2 weeks. I was like, God, that seems like a lot.
Probably every 2 or 3 weeks would be, I would think. I mean, if someone wants to follow me every week, it's not going to hurt my feelings. But I would say every 2 or 3 weeks, probably, without maybe bugging someone. But then again, I'm a pretty persistent person. So, I don't know if that's great advice or not, because I'm in sales.
Still
But
want to be that person.
Yeah. All right. No, I don't think so. I mean, just a nice email. It's kind of how someone follows up, honestly. Yeah. Someone can follow up maybe once, but if they're aggressive and nasty, then it's not going to feel good. If someone follows up every 2 or 3 weeks and they're nice and they're pleasant, and they don't have to be nice, but just not mean or anything, then it doesn't bother me. Especially going on the last one, or not the last one, but if someone's local, or they'll get on a Zoom call, or they'll, if you can go have a coffee with them, definitely try to go do that. Because, I mean, I work with people all over the Southeast, and a lot of it's just because of the distance. It's just by phone or maybe Teams. But I really enjoy meeting with people over a coffee if it's in Nashville locally, because you get to know them and more personal, and sometimes too there's something I learn about them that I didn't know, or something like, I didn't really think about that till we talked through it. So there's only so much you can learn on a 20-minute, 30-minute call, and plus you build a relationship, and you can help each other, because most people I think out there want to help each other. And I've had many people I've met with. Some I met with one gentleman that a little out of my industries in healthcare, and I met with him, and happened to, I was like, well, reach out to this guy or this guy or this gal, because you might, I don't know if they have a job for you, but it might be a connection. there's just networking, referral. And he was just extremely professional about how he came and met me. We had a coffee, and he just was. I was able to give him 2 or 3 more people to meet with, and I think we were able to help each other. So if you can, try to meet with them, or really recruiter or anybody. I think in your sphere that you could help each other and maybe network a little bit. I think it's just really great because, as you said, it's your relationships really key, and you never know if you're targeting Parallon. It's not too hard to go on LinkedIn, look at Parallon, and say, who else do I know works here? And then you might even forget someone, and you can reach out to them and say, hey, I saw this role. The hiring manager. It's just relationships are really, really key to help you separate from all the applicants that are online are coming in the inbox. So, and the last one, think like a recruiter. I think we talked about that a little bit. Just, that's just trying to go beyond just the application process, the applying. So, anyway, I'm starting to ramble again, but see, that might be, yeah. So thank you very much. Are there any additional questions or?
Yeah, let's follow up. What was the conversation about the veteran? Was it what?
HCA has recruiters that are specific for veterans. If Scott can put me in touch, or you in touch with me, Kim Ray, I'd be happy to help connect you with one.
I can connect with them too, because I have a friend here who's very connected in that world, and he's just taken a definite. It's part of his mission to help veterans. Find a spot in multiple different. He's connected many of them with me that have banking backgrounds with veterans. So, and I know about a few other companies here that are very, very pro veteran. So,
the training at St. Luke's University. I know of an organization.
I don't think there's any harm in putting your resume out there. I think it just depends on, and I'm not maybe the most tech savvy, but I'm mainly going to look close. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Uh-huh. I would think, and I'm not an expert on LinkedIn on that version, but I would imagine there's maybe a way to search within title or keywords, hospitality recruiter, or I would think there'd be a way to do some research to find someone that's somewhere in their title or in their body is that they're a recruiter in the hospitality industry.
So this is Karuna. There is in LinkedIn, there is Sales Navigator, but that's a subscription only option. It allows you to search for a specific company or the decision maker of the company or the HR manager, director of the company. They'll give you the email address and their name and contact if that's what you're looking for. But that, like I said, it's a paid subscription.
Yeah. Probably hard.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I don't know how much I can add, but I'll hand out my business cards if you have a later thought or a question, or if you want me to check your resume out, or if you even, need help maybe finding some other hospitality recruiters. Happy to help however I can. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Y'all make peace. It's great, man.
Oh, good.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate it. I need to send you my resume.
Yeah.
Banking Never really had anybody.
Yeah. I know. It's
Still thinking that maybe doing something different.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know. It's just,
Yeah.
you get busy. I mean, I do feel like I'm probably off the field start this year. So,
Yeah.
Pretty good year here. I really want to change courses and go deal with all that.
I know.
It's just hard to make that jump. I mean, if somebody called me tomorrow with a great opportunity, I'd be like all in. But
Right.
It's hard to sort of get to like go full search mode.
It's like another job.
When
Yeah.
you're pretty happy where you are and you're paying well.
Yeah.
But I would love to send you my resume.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've never had anybody get it.
No,
So I update it every now and then, just keep it fresh. And every now and then I've had folks call me, send me a resume, but
Yeah.
it's been a while.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, they do it all the time.
I am, yeah. Not geographically, but yes.
Yes, sir.
But yes.
Oh. Thank you. Nice. Yeah. Especially in healthcare. Yeah.
You know, the single best person that you should talk to here in town that you might not know?
Who?
You ever heard of Jeff Davis? at Berkshire Capital?
I know the name.
He's,
Like private equity?
No,
Really?
well, he's a Wall Street analyst for years. I used to work with him.
Jeff Davis?
Jeff Davis. I'll shoot you out his contact.
Yeah.
Shoot her an email, but she says, I do what you do. But anyway, Jeff Davis analyzes every bank in the Southeast. Knows all the secrets, and he was on. I worked at Jason Bradford, but on Wall Street for like 30 years, but now Berkshire Capital is M&A advisors.
Oh, yeah.
So he knows who's hiring, who's selling.
He knows it first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He really does.
Yeah.
Even like banks like Synergy Bank, I was a founding shareholder of Synergy Bank. which
Oh,
became-
really?
Which became the other lineage.
Yeah.
But he'll even monitor stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So he catches them on the way up.
Oh, yeah. That'd be awesome. Yeah. Those are.
I'm gonna
Thank
shoot
you.
your question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Appreciate what you do.
You get a card? Okay. Good. Nice to meet you, Dan. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. It's nice to meet you. Yeah, let me know if you can't find it because I could probably do a search pretty quickly and with my tools and find who I wish I knew a hospitality recruiter, but and shoot me your resume too because you never know. I might, it just might be someone I can share it with.
You know what, though, at this point in my life, I'm not married to that field. Asset management is a function I like, and that can be translated into the senior care, apartments, things like that. It doesn't have to be hotel. That's just my background.
Yeah.
But I've been, I'd be looking at, if somebody said, what kind of job do you want? I can say I'm regional director of operations, overseeing a portfolio, hotels, or asset management. Overlooking the facility conditions, capital budgeting, really forecasting, viewing P&L statements.
A lot of healthcare asset management here. You've probably seen,
A lot of what?
healthcare, like medical office asset management here. I don't know if that's something you did. I mean, gosh, if you could manage healthcare, if you could manage hospitality portfolio, I'm sure healthcare is too.
You mean like a building, if it's not regulated, I need to have a license to be in the.
No, I don't mean like I'm not talking about like a operator, like managing it's more of the real estate asset. I wonder, would that correlate, with the.
Being a building,
Right? Yeah.
I mean, you could say that for anything.
Yeah.
You could say that for a church or
Yeah.
The personal marketing brief.
Like looking at the condition, I think something that has
Next week,
residential, like
we're doing a
beds,
special session.
whether it's an apartment. It could be.
Okay.
It could be.
Yeah.
You
But
should hang up with
healthcare,
your
I guess,
friend.
has the.
Do whatever.
Yeah.
But
That's true.
That would be a great
Yeah.
tool.
But I've looked at senior living, I've looked at apartments.
If he's a good friend, he can wait an hour.
You can transfer into a lot of.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I don't want to appear too broad. You guys want somebody that's focused or that's a breadth of skills.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do the shotgun.
Okay.
I'll be this.
All right.
that.
So-
Yeah, it's challenging if someone tells me I'm open to anything.
That's fine. I mean,
It's not that I wouldn't work with them, but it makes it hard for me to focus on what should I call them about? So that can be a little tricky, but it's still, I think when you can show how your skill set transfers to other things and be specific about that.
That's two things.
Yeah.
Asset management, regional portfolio,
Yes, sir.
portfolio.
Two things.
That's pretty specific.
One is,
Yeah.
I have a ton of training.
Yeah, absolutely.
They kind of go hand in hand anyway, whether you're in regional, if you own a bunch of hotels.
Lean Six Sigma.
Yeah.
And you hire me to go oversee.
Right.
Are they being run right?
Can you talk to that man right there?
Yeah.
Buildings, are they turning a profit? Are they meeting?
Go talk to him. He might be able to use.
That's a regional director of operations. Are the employees happy and trained?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's me. Or I could be your asset manager. They
all
your
commissions and
assets
everything?
needs.
Okay.
Run.
Yeah.
It's similar job. that you have.
Yes, yeah.
You know, and it could be a hotel, it could be an apartment. Whatever. I'm just need somebody I can find.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
Hospitality is, it's a pretty broad industry.
yeah.
Touch base with
But
them,
I'm
maybe you can help them out.
I'll send you my resume.
Yeah,
What?
yeah, I might,
Dark
might be, I never know who I might come across who,
Yes, ma'am.
you know, who, if I think of anyone, in that industry, I can certainly reach out, let you know. But yeah, no, you send it to me, because
Yeah.
Okay.
I live in, you know where Fairview is?
Fairview?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I'm in Fairview.
Okay.
Heard of it, but it's south, right?
It is, it's,
Why would you, if you like.
it's past Franklin, it's like the southwest corner of Williamson, right before you get to Dixon or Bon Aqua. Like if you kept going, you could. Well, I go 96 to 100, but you can go 840. It just takes a little longer. But they did that Mac Hatcher cut around, and that saved me
It may not.
so much time.
Over there to,
If you.
Yes, near West Haven. So I go by West Haven and then up the hill home. So how about you? Where do you live? No. Keep going straight. Yep. Yeah. Good to see you. Yeah, of course. My pleasure. Yeah.
Again.
I'm fortunate, I live 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
I go to this church, that's how I know this.
Okay, yeah, great church. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been here to do this, but Jay's a great guy. And well, what's funny because I met Jay because that's just what I do, right? I called him and said, "Would you want to have a coffee?" And I'm trying to be banquets in town. I had a coffee with him, and we kind of started talking. He said, "Hey, did you ever be interested in, speaking one night?" And I was like, "Sure," and it was really interesting because the last time I did this, I found out like a week before I might be losing my job, so it was a real personal one. It was like, I was like, man, it was really, great to do because it was like I needed to be here too, So,
Is all that true?
yeah, but I've been through some
So that is
rough career patches myself, so it's nice to share what I can and help what I can because I just remember, boy, it's like the people who helped me or said something kind when I was, and that certainly meant the world because I was in a dark place. So, yeah,
Me a couple of times.
Yeah. Everyone's going to get it or go through it at some point in their career. It just,
Benefit of being a little older. Is I don't have to deal with this long.
yeah, that's true.
Fortunately, I was saved while I was younger.
Yeah.
Still not at a point where I
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not quite there.
Yeah.
Got a few more years.
But I found now if I go back, it feels like there's a lot of.
I'll send it for you.
Yeah.
You're also a lot of young people,
Don
right? I mean, Kroger is always wanting to
Come from Don, W-Y-N-E.
Okay.
I shop there all the time. and they
Awesome.
always do good
All right, wonderful.
Pleasure.
Nice
Yeah,
meet
nice to meet you too. Yeah, you too.
Nathan, don't leave.
Okay.
I just want to say
Thank
thank
you
you.
so
Oh, thank you.
I can't tell you, this part is the best conversation. that we have had in
That's
a
my
long
favorite
time.
because I was looking at my my pleasure. I was looking at my thing. I'm like, this is so boring. So I was like, I hope people want to interact.
It's not had as much
Ah.
interaction. So-
That's
so
great.
Great.
Thank you. Well, it helps me too because I
got my lavalier back.
I need, yeah. I don't like it when it's just me talking.
Right,
So,
I know, I know.
You know, honestly,
I don't know.
and I almost, I don't did on.
See you Thursday morning, right?
I gotta put a presentation together and then it just. And I'll let you. You'll determine where it's at. I'm just here. But I've been, like what you were saying earlier. I don't know, something totally. I would go back. Really are. Yeah, all this stuff. And
some kind of people interjected and knew I was struggling and walked with me and helped me. And I'll never forget that. He always stayed with me. So whenever I get an opportunity to, take help, that's me. I don't like today, so our business is all this success, especially sometimes this place where you go. I think things are going to turn you.
Yep. Things are true. I'm very confident of that.
Well, how many more days do we have?
Yeah.
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 They can't get it.
Great.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I had a big deal.
If there's anything we can do for you.
Oh, yeah. You know, Jay,
You have a business card?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry to keep you.
No.
Go back to your family.
No, it's good. I told them.
Thank you.
I'll be out late.
All right, thank you for the advice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because, I don't know. But I talked to my recruiter buddy who placed me at Signet Basis. Everybody knows.
Yeah.
But they don't know that.
Right. And they're probably not the right company.
But rather.
It's like people at HOs, right? They're like, you're in hospitality or restaurant and there's a gap or code like, it's pretty expensive, right?
Yeah. I'll be like, I won't. Later in the day. Sunsetting on the pool, which I did do.
Yeah, right. They don't need
During the summer.
Something there.
And I see him in the park, he sees me.
Yeah.
He knows me. Yeah, but yeah, I'll give you a ring.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know, Wednesday, Thursday, something like that.
Sure. Yeah, I'm around.
You gave a great presentation.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Well, it really helps when it's interactive.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so I really appreciate it because it always goes somewhere where, I mean, people ask questions, I was like, oh, I should have put that, I should have written those down. I was like, I need to be in the thing about, being overqualified.
I don't know what I don't know. So every time you mention something that was like, oh, we need to ask about that. I didn't know what the questions I was gonna ask. I didn't know where my gaps were.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that overqualified was the thing, and I was like, okay.
See you, Scott.
Yeah, likewise. See you when it gets warmer.
Well, I hope so.